Good evening, TNT family. We are fortunate again to have our MP and Shadow Minister David Lee with us, and we're going to be addressing basically the misinformation by Energy Minister Stuart Young, in reference to the 2013 deeds that took place. And MP Lee, before we get into that, I saw an incident where a rig collapsed. I believe it was rig 110, and we're still
Hmm.
missing one employee there on that rig. I don't know if you get any update if he was found or what's the situation, but I'm kind of concerned about the maintenance of these rigs, and also I'm concerned about having things in place so we can respond to such emergency. And I'm not sure what kind of response they got and how quick they got it with this incident. So if you can enlighten us a little bit before we get into Mr. Young's statement.
Sure, Gary. And let me just say good night to your viewers, listeners, once again. I think in the last month, I think I've been starring on your show on a regular basis. So I want to thank you and your listeners out there. I'm hoping that the feedback is positive and your viewers and listeners can understand and appreciate a little bit more of what is happening in the energy sector. Are you hearing me properly?
Yeah, I'm hearing you pretty good. Yeah.
Right. Well, I awoke just like you did, Gary, this morning, where I started to get some messages via WhatsApp on my phone from some colleagues of mine from OWTU and some information how, even though it was sketchy at that time, it was around 5 o'clock this morning, thereabouts, at a rig 110, which you had suggested or you had named in your opening remarks, um, collapsed in the offshore in the East Field, and I would assume that is more in the Mayaro area. Um, the information as I have it is still a little bit sketchy. We understand one person is still missing. I think I saw some videos clippings in about maybe about 2 hours ago that there are some cries of someone trapped somewhere on the rig where it's collapsed. And I'm hoping and I'm praying that that is the individual, the missing employee, and they're able to retrieve him all intact, without any sort of injuries done to him. So I'm keeping the faith. We are all the citizens are hoping that there's a positive outcome for that individual and his family. So let me just say our concerns are there at this point in time until we get some sort of further clarification of what is happening with that missing or unaccounted for employee. And I think there was a name given to him. From if it's correct, it's one Mr. Pete Phillip,
That's what I saw.
based on the messages or the information that I have seen out there on the social media. So we are praying that he is recovered all well and safe and sound and to return to his family members all without any injuries, especially as we are now in the Christmas season. Now, saying that the rig 110 and the information I have been getting, I don't know if it's validated, if it's true or not, but it appears that, or it's alleged that the rig, based on some videos that I saw and some voices who were videotaping that rig when they were viewing the collapse of the rig, was mentioning that there were some pipes that were stored on the rig, and maybe it wasn't stored properly in respect of balancing the weight on that rig, and too many pipes were on one side of the rig, causing it, based on the video that I saw, how true it is, to really collapse under the weight of the imbalancing of the rig, or the weight distribution on the rig as respect to the pipes. So that's the information I saw on video in the social media. I cannot substantiate it. But I also got some reports that the response time from the Coast Guard was again, leaves much to be desired. The response time, again, the allegations or it's alleged that the response time was wanting. It wasn't a quick response that the employees would have wanted. So again, that is unsubstantiated. I also saw some pictures, again, pictures and photo ops of Minister Young. Um, I don't know at where he was, either at the command center of the owners of the rig, which is Well Services, getting an update, a brief on it. So he's doing his photo op showing concern, which he should be, and I really hope that he is able, Minister Young, that is able to shed some clarification, some clarity on this tragedy that took place early this morning of the East Fields, the offshore East Fields on Rig 110. So we await. I would not, the opposition would not put out a release until we are sure that and hoping that Mr. Phillips is found safely, um, so that we hold him in our prayers, Mr. Phillips. And that is as much as I would like to say on this matter, Gary, unless you have anything to add further on it. That's as much information that I have at this point in time.
Right, right. So we just at this point we just concerned. I mean, you brought some information that they heard some voices which I didn't catch on to. So that's good to know.
Hmm.
My concern is I would like to get some report on Mr. Young's uh, time frame of his notification, what action he took to lend assistance, being minister in the Prime Minister office and Minister of Energy, and all the resources to his disposal. I would like to get some feedback on that. I know it's so reminds us of the Paria situation.
Well, mhm.
It kind of brings
Again, it brings back a sort of a deja vu memory sort of scenario. Any disaster that takes place, in our energy sector, is not a good feeling for us as citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, because especially if you know injuries done to the life of employees or anyone. So it is with a lot of trepidation that we in the opposition will tread very carefully on this matter. But Minister Young has a responsibility to report to the nation, on update to the nation of this matter, because Rig 1110, while it was owned by Well Services, it was doing work for the Heritage Company, which was a restructuring, one of the companies that came out of the closure of Petrotrin, and Heritage, which I would was is responsible for petroleum production, whether it is oil and gas, in the fields that they are responsible for. So Well Services was doing work for Heritage, the company. So there is some synergies between, while Well Services was a rig operator, Heritage has a responsibility to play, whether it is from a safety point of view, an OSHA point of view, of the rig, even though it is owned by Well Services, but they were doing work for Heritage in the waters that are technically, lack of a better word, belong to the Heritage Petroleum Company. So there is a responsibility that Heritage and Minister Young has for the country to update us on what is going on out there. And that is one of the issues I have with this government. This government takes too long to update our country, our citizens, of what is taking place when a disaster happens. You have to actually force it out of them and sort of embarrass them before they can get some proper information coming out. So again, we wait and see and hope that the proper thing is done by the authorities in charge.
Uh, Dr. Lee Trini here. Um, Good night.
Good night, Trey.
I'd like to ask a very pertinent question. We had that incident with the divers
Mm-hmm,
some years back. I believe it's 3+ years back.
mm-hmm,
And now we have an incident offshore again, an industrial incident,
mm-hmm,
which will require divers. Now, at that incident we had with 4 divers, the Coast Guard came in and they came in with guns. They didn't come in with divers to assist. They didn't have trained dive personnel or equipment available to assist in any way.
mm-hmm.
Did anything happen in the Coast Guard since then till now to remedy that situation? So now there are divers in the Coast Guard with training and equipment that can assist tonight with the rescue. Do you know? Can you tell us?
Well, Trini, I do have. You make a valid point, Trini. Right? So you have a. I mean, you would have thought, and I want to draw the analogy. You have a Coast Guard vessel that is patrolling the seas. All right. While they might have, they're patrolling the borders, they're patrolling the seas for any sort of incident that can take place, whether it is search and rescue. And one of the issues is search and rescue. So you would have thought that, search and rescue can mean something that you would need divers at all time on board as part of the crew on a Coast Guard vessel. Um, so you would have thought that would have been a basic sort of personnel with proper equipment on board the vessel if they're doing search and rescue, if they're even patrolling our borders. Because at any point in time, you don't know when a disaster might take it. They might have to do a recovery of a overturned vessel or something like that, and they would need divers. So that part, to me, it is like a fire. It's like a fire tender truck. One of the requirements of a fire tender truck that they should have water in the fire tender truck, right?
Correct.
Yeah, it is something as basic as that. So that, I don't have any information. If I understand, again, it's all alleged, it's all information that is on social media, that when the Coast Guard tender did arrive on site at this rig 1110, they didn't have divers in place. That's what I saw. How true it is, how valid that information is, I cannot say. And that is why,
Right.
information that Minister Young should come and update the country and take a press conference to the media so that the media could ask these questions. Now, I'm not blaming Minister Young if there are no divers in place, but that you would have thought that from a personnel point of view, from the hierarchy of the Coast Guard, that something like that should be in place, right?
Well,
So
MP, I mean, we should learn from the last incident with Paria. I mean, Minister Young should have learned there that we should needed certain
well,
things to be in place. You know,
no, well, I cannot I cannot blame Minister Young as a Minister of Energy. He doesn't have responsibility for the Coast Guard. But I would have thought, and we must, you don't play the blame game. I do not play the blame game all over the place because the minister in charge. You would have thought that coming out of the Paria incident, that the hierarchy of the Coast Guard, the defense force who is responsible for the Coast Guard, the commander in charge of the Coast Guard, that if you sending out a vessel to patrol our water, or if you're sending a vessel, they would have gotten a distress call, search and rescue for rig 1110. And if they're sending out a search and rescue vessel, and it's a rig 1110, and they would have gotten some sort of information, the rig collapsed, somebody's missing, the basic thing you would have sent is divers. You would have thought that you would have sent divers as part of the search and rescue. So, I don't want to speculate too much of what happened out there without proper information.
no,
But
we
the time
understand.
will tell. Time will tell that that this is where Minister of Young, or even a Minister of National Security, who's responsible for the Coast Guard, right? Now, if things like that are happening in the hierarchy of the defense force, the Coast Guard, whatever, then some heads should roll if what did we learn out of the Paria incident? Then we learned nothing out of the Paria incident. If these things if these errors and keep happening within the arms of our national security. So I cannot prejudge, I cannot state, I cannot answer for Minister Young, I cannot answer for the Minister of National Security. All we can do is ask questions.
MP, good night. This is Arjun Haripol.
Mm-hmm.
I hear your comment about the learnings and so on, but more than just the learnings, coming out of the Paria incident, there was a commission of inquiry. And that
Mm-hmm.
commission of inquiry, as expensive as it was, would have made recommendations. Are these recommendations being followed in this particular incident, for example?
Well, that's a very good point, Mr. June. I mean, we can only, as the opposition, you as citizens, can only ask certain pertinent questions. If do we learn anything out of these expensive commission of inquiries? There were certain recommendations that the commissioner, Casey Lynch, had put forward, and maybe the government of the day don't take the advice of these recommendations coming out of that commission. There were a lot of things that he had recommended, and only when something unforeseen has happened, like what we have this morning, that one then can question, coming out of the commission of inquiry, what transpired or what are the recommendations. But I cannot speak for the government. The government has to speak for themselves, Mr. Arjun. We can only get angry. We can only give subjecture. We can only comment until we get a full briefing from Minister of Energy, or whether it is the Minister of Energy, whether the Minister of National Security or the commander in charge of the Coast Guard, that the media can ask certain questions. Or even coming out of that, we in Parliament, whenever Parliament is reconvened in the new year, that we can file certain questions to get to the answer of these things. Because, you can, if an incident happened, and if you try to minimize the disaster, and if basic equipment and basic personnel are not there, then we have to keep asking the question, why not? What did we learn coming out of the Paria incident? And I cannot answer those questions at this point in time. We in the opposition, or the citizens of Trinidad, cannot answer those questions because we don't have the answers. We are not there. We can only ask certain questions when the time arises.
Right. So I know, MP, your time was limited here. We will continue this discussion with you on another day. We want to get into the economics where Arjun can be very helpful here in seeing Stuart Young's statements about what transpired in 2013 under the PPG, and blaming the PPG again, flipping things around, and about the deals made there. There's the cause for the decline in business and what transpired. So maybe you can enlighten us a little bit with there, and Arjun can help us with that too.
Well, I don't know, Mr. Arjun. I mean, you all would have seen my releases. I would have spoken about it on the last Monday night cottage meeting held at the headquarters, where I brought certain things to light, and it was there. I mean, it was reported in the press of another $1.3 billion loss by National Gas Company in 2023. And there were certain things that transpired out of that closed door press briefing. And one of the issues that I had, and one of the concerns that we have in the opposition, why would the chairman of NGC call reporters to a closed door, behind the scenes press briefing to sort of do public relations and inform them, well, we are now coming to the ending of 2024. We had a $1.3 billion loss in 2023, which we are now bringing to light. but things are not as bad as it is, because this is the chairman of NGC is telling the reporters things are not as bad as it is for 2024. Things look good. If things stay on course, we should make a profit in NGC in 2024, while we had a loss in 2023. Now the way this thing is being done, again, the closed door situation, the lack of transparency and accountability, it does not give good corporate governance to a major company like National Gas Company, which we, the taxpayers, we, the government, they depend so much on the taxes that NGC pay, the dividends that the government receive on behalf of the taxpayers, to do things in our country, so that it leaves really much to be desired in the way that NGC is being run by this present government. Now, so I challenged the chairman, and I said, I use a catchphrase, we must keep our eyes on this present chairman Khan. And who told me to say something like that? Because I saw on Thursday at Cabinet Press Briefing, Minister Young got on in a tirade, that blaming the UNC government based on a purchase of a company, or shares or percentage of the company back in 2013. Now, 2013 is we are in 2024, more than 10 years ago. And Minister Young is blaming because they have to write off goodwill that an amount in the goodwill of the company, of a certain company that they purchased back in 2013, because the value of that goodwill has depreciated. But and who is to say? You see, these things are done so haphazardly, in my view, that in 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2021, NGC made a profit. 2022, they made a profit. I didn't hear Minister Young praising the UNC for the investments that they would have done that triggered these profits. But in 2020, there was another loss of $2.1 billion. All right. In 2023, we are getting another loss of $1.3 billion. Never before in the history of NGC, under any previous government, whether it is the PP government led by Kamala Persad-Bissessar, whether it was the Manning government, never before has NGC made a loss. Right. We have now, in the last 9 years, suffered 2 losses. Went to under NGC in 2020 and now in 2023. So in total, we have this NGC has lost or have written off $3.4 billion. Now, and we are now coming to the ending of 2024. And now we are being told 2 weeks ago or last week, well, the loss was in 2023. Again, why I would have thought your financials would have been so up to date that you would have known you would have had a loss in 23, maybe at the end of the first quarter of 2024. Why are you now reporting this loss coming to the ending of 2023? Why would you report that loss? Took you so long to report that loss? And is it because they were breaks in? And I use the word breaks in from reporting this loss to the country. And now they had no other alternative because the time is due. They have to produce it, that they have no other choice but to report to the country we had a loss. But they are saying that, okay, while we had a loss in 2023, we are going to we're going to be making a profit in 2024. So it's just a messy situation with NGC, and also you in that whole closed door situation with NGC when they had these reporters at the Bricks Hotel. The chairman was telling them, well, we can't appoint a new president of the NGC at this point in time, because it's silly season, meaning that we are going to election shortly next year, and we don't want to hire a new president, because we know if there's a change in government, the first person to get the axe would be the president. Why would they say something like that? So then are you telling me you are hiring a president, based on political affiliation and not based on competence? I mean, is that what the chairman is telling this country? That's the reason why this government and himself and his board are not hiring a president, a permanent president, because of election. And if there's a change of government, the first person to be fired would be the president of NGC that they hired. And then clearly it tells me two things, that the gentleman will be hiring someone that is politically affiliated to this present government and not hiring based on merit and competence. That's a scary thing. That's a scary thing, all right? Or he's also telling me, as I said in my Monday night thing, maybe he knows there's going to be a change of government, and he feels that the PNM government would lose the next election, so he doesn't want to put his political hack as the president at NGC. So it just does not make sense, gentlemen, of the way this present chairman and this minister of energy is running NGC. It is running like it is their own parlor. It is their little shop, their little playground. All right. So there's a lot more that is going on at NGC that we need to get to the bottom of it, and we will continue asking and exposing the issues at NGC.
Well, we will definitely reach out to you and Peter continue the conversation. Go ahead, Arjun.
Yeah, the question I would have, Mr. Lee, the question I would have for the management of NGC is this. Why did it take you 9 years to figure out that this was a bad investment decision by the PP government? You would have known along the way that this was a bad investment decision. And if it was a bad investment decision, then what you do is you don't wait until 2024 to make a write-off of $1.3 billion. What you do along the way is make provisioning in your account each year to write off that impending loss. That is the way businesses run.
And that is the proper accounting issues. All right. So I agree with you, Mr. Arjun, but let me start off where you started off from. A bad investment. Who says it's a bad investment?
No, but I'm saying if.
No, but you see, this is okay. Even let us stay. Let's forget the word the pronoun.
If your voice went a little low, you want to check your mic?
Yeah, let us forget if. All right. Why? Because you see, Young says it's blaming the UNC because was a bad investment. But everybody else, and including Young, is also saying the company is a good company. The company is a solid company. All right. So, what is really, this is what I'm saying, that there's a lot of questions one has to get into to really understand if it is really a bad investment that they are blaming it on the goodwill. All right. And you're correct, Mr. Arjun. If the goodwill was overstated over the last 10 years, then in proper accounting, as you well know, each year they would have made a provision of it's like depreciation, right? You would depreciate the goodwill over a period of time if you feel the value of that goodwill is overstated. All right, but everyone else is saying the investment is a good investment, the company is a good company, it is a profit-making company. So you really have to understand what is really going on if that write-off is really a proper write-off, or it is masking something else that we don't know.
And I will question the timing of it. It's coming on the heels of impending general election.
Correct.
So I am not saying that it was a bad investment. I'm saying If you are now telling us that it is a bad investment and that the goodwill was highly appreciated or whatever, you should have taken the necessary steps along the way to correct it. You can't come now on the heels of a general election and tell me bad decision by the PP government, therefore we're going to do this. I could only conclude one thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's politically savvy for you to do that.
Correct. And you would have thought that if the investment was such a overstated goodwill in 2016 and 15, Jerry Brooks was the chairman. All right, 15, 16, 17, nobody thought about writing off or making provisions for the goodwill on an annual basis. All right, even Conrad Enel took over from Jerry Brooks, nothing was done. And you're correct. Why at this late stage you now feel that you have to make this massive write-off in one sweep? All right. So there's a lot, Mr. Arjun, you're correct. I agree with you. And you know, even the non-hiring of a permanent CEO or president of NGC is another factor that is on the heels of election, and the comments that the chairman Khan would have made, it just does not, it is not credible. I mean, as a chairman, as one of the crown jewels of Trinidad and Tobago, as a state company called National Gas Company, it is it is insane that he cannot hire or look for the best competent and capable individual to run National Gas Company because an election is impending next year, and that's the reason why he's not going to do it. I mean, is it because they really don't want to have a competent individual in place and they want to be able, whoever they put as acting CEOs, and change them every 6 months and have them like, their little, their puppet, that they will do what they need to be done coming into election, because they need to get money to run an election. So I would not be surprised if dividends are going to be paid off at NGC to be able to run certain capital expenditure that the government has promised this country, and they do not have the money to do it. So they have to find the money, so either from borrowings or taking money from state enterprises that are profitable via dividends. So there's a lot that leaves. It is unknown. It is very scary. And if the opposition does not keep exposing these issues, this government keeps getting away with certain things. And I saw in the papers, just to digress a little bit, I saw in the papers, you know, when it is politics, when the election is close, they are now dangling back the petroleum refinery in the eyes of the citizenry, where Minister Young in today's one of the in the newspapers today saying that three companies would get letters of offer for them to go in to make an offer for the purchase, or they have shortlisted three of the companies to make an offer, a final offer for the purchase of the refinery. So once again, that election is very, very close. That refinery is a political football for this PNM government and for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Every time there's an election, they come out with that refinery.
Any other question, guys? MP is at the event. He took some time to join us. So MP would like to continue this conversation as developments takes place with the rig and, and other issues relating to the energy sector. We'll reach out to you to see if you could give us a few minutes on this. So
sure.
with that,
I try to always be available for you, Gary, and because you the good work you're doing out
right.
there
So
in the
we're going to
diaspora.
continue discussion. Guys, you have any other question, Trini, Arjun?
I'm okay for now, thanks.
Yeah. So MP, we're going to invite you back as soon as any developments. I will reach out to you, and
Sure.
we will continue discussion. Same with all our colleagues out there. With
And
that,
if
I would say,
I just before I leave, I just want to wish you, Mr. Arjun, Trini, your viewers, your listeners, a very blessed Merry Christmas, Holy Season. And all good things positive to you and your team, and a great show that you do on a daily basis, keeping the diaspora informed of what is happening in Sweet TNT.
Well, we have Mr. Arjun, who's an economist on the ground, and Trini has some of the experience in the oil industry. So these guys are on the ground, available to the UNC anytime this is necessary. They're there to support you guys physically on the ground.
Thank you so
And
much.
just wanted to mention that they are definitely available to you.
Thank you.
If there's any need, Arjun is a very experienced economist, as far as I know.
Yeah,
So I will share those information with you.
I appreciate.
Again, MP, have a Merry Christmas,
You too.
and
Be
we will
safe.
be seeing. I will be reaching out to you. I will definitely be reaching out
I
to you
know.
soon.
I know.
So,
I know.
as soon as any development comes
I
up with
know.
this situation. All
I
right.
know.
So
Gary,
thank you very
Gary,
much.
before you go, Gary, just to mention to you that you may not be aware, but David Lee and I go back way back to Central Bank in the 1980s. In
Oh,
fact,
okay,
when I
that's good
first
to.
joined the Central Bank, he would have been the HR person, handling my
Oh,
stories. So
nice.
it's a
Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
long,
listen,
Mr.
long
I'm sure
time
you
ago.
Arjun.
guys.
I don't know if you remember when one of these things was in HR. I hired, besides yourself, I was instrumental in the governor, Mr.
Jawala Rambaran.
Jawala. Right.
That's right.
So, all right. So Mr.
Oh, that's
Arjun
nice to know.
well
That's
knows
nice to
that
know.
we go back long time. That's a long time. A
That's
long
a
time.
very long time ago.
Long time. So it's
But
be safe,
thank you,
guys.
thank
Again,
you so
thank
much,
you.
and all the best to you
Thank you.
and your
Same to
family
you.
as well.
Thank you, and yours too. Thank you so
All
Thank
right,
much.
you.
Dad. So good night, MP. Thank you very much
Okay,
again. I'll
good
be in
night.
touch.
Bye bye.
Okay. Good night, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join us.
Good night.